no Malaysians involved in Kathmandu air crash. And also, Thailand unveils billion-dollar handout scheme. Good afternoon and salam Malaysia Madani. Pleasure to have you with us. I'm Brendan Lepal and you're watching World Today. A passenger plane crashed on takeoff in Kathmandu. The pilot was rescued from the wreckage, but all 18 others aboard were killed. Nepal has a woeful track record on aviation safety. The Himalayan Republic has seen a spate of deadly light plane and helicopter crashes over the decades. The Saurya Airlines flight was carrying 2 crew and 17 of the company's staff members. Nepali police spokesman Dan Bahadur Karki said the pilot had been rescued and was currently receiving treatment, while 18 bodies had been recovered, including 1 foreigner. The Civil Aviation Authority said the foreigner was a Yemeni citizen. A news release from the airport said the aircraft veered off the right and crashed on the east side of the runway shortly after takeoff. The plane was scheduled to fly on Nepal's busiest air route between Kathmandu and Pokhara, an important tourism hub. Nepal has some of the world's trickiest runways to land on, flanked by snow-capped peaks, with approaches that pose a challenge even for accomplished pilots. Nepal's last major incident involving a commercial flight was in January last year, when a Yeti Airlines service crashed while landing at Pokhara, killing all 72 aboard. In a related development, the Foreign Ministry said no Malaysians were involved in or affected by the air accident in Kathmandu. Through the Embassy of Malaysia in Kathmandu, the ministry is closely monitoring the aftermath of the air incident. The Foreign Ministry added Malaysia extends its deepest sympathies and condolences to the victims and families affected by the accident, as well as to the people and government of Nepal. The ministry also urged Malaysians in the affected areas to stay vigilant and follow the latest updates and guidance provided by the local authorities. The Foreign Ministry said it will continue to monitor the situation and provide updates if necessary. An explosion at a Jose Cuervo tequila plant in central Mexico killed at least 6 workers and forced evacuation of tourists from the area in the tequila municipality. Chief of Emergency Services and Firefighters in Jalisco State, Victor Hugo Roldan, said that the blast occurred in a 500,000-litre tank at the plant and the resulting fire was put out by company personnel. Drone footage of the explosion's aftermath showed a large metal tank emblazoned with the Cuervo logo collapse on its side. At least 2 other tanks at the facilities operated by the world's largest tequila maker, Bakel, also collapsed. In a statement, the company confirmed the death toll from the accident at its Rohena plant, adding that several other workers were injured. According to a statement from emergency services, the explosion in 1 tank triggered a fire in 3 others. The cause of the blast remains unknown. Those living near the factory were evacuated temporarily, returning to their homes after a few hours, while the electricity supply was briefly cut as a safety measure. The town of Tequila, home to several distilleries of the agave spirit, is a popular tourist destination about an hour's drive northwest of Guadalajara, Mexico's 2nd largest city. Typhoon Gami made landfall on Taiwan's eastern coast after unleashing torrential rainfall and whipping winds across the island that left 2 people dead. Along its path to Taiwan, Gami also exacerbated seasonal rains in nearby Philippines, triggering flooding and landslides that killed 6. According to Central Weather Administration, the superstorm hit Taiwan's eastern Yilan County at around 12 a.m. local time. The first typhoon to make landfall in Taiwan this year, Gami was expected to be the strongest one in 8 years. It had caused downpours and strong gusts across Taiwan before its arrival, killing 1 motorist in southern Kohong City, who was crushed by a falling tree, and a woman in eastern Hualien. More than 200 people were injured by Wednesday evening, while more than 290,000 homes were plunged into darkness due to power outages. Trains and ferry services were suspended and hundreds of international and domestic flights were cancelled. Schools and offices will remain closed for the 2nd day in a row in several cities, including Taipei, with authorities expecting adverse weather to continue across the island. In southern Ethiopia, tearful crowds gathered around a mud pit containing dead bodies as volunteers dug for survivors of landslides that have killed at least 229 people and displaced thousands more. Humanitarian agencies scrambled to rush emergency relief aid to the stricken community after the deadliest such incident recorded in Ethiopia, a country highly vulnerable to climate-related disasters. Around 14,000 affected people, including children and pregnant women, needed to be evacuated because of the risk of further landslides in the remote and mountainous area in Kencho Shacha Gosdi. Head of Communications for the South Ethiopia Regional Government, Sainite Solomon, said the landslide site was sloped and prone to disasters, adding that conservation work to protect the area, including tree planting, had been underway at the time of the landslides. Officials said that most of the victims were buried after they rushed to help after the first landslide, which followed heavy rains on Sunday in the area roughly 450 kilometers from the capital Addis Ababa, about a 10-hour drive. Thailand's government unveiled a $1 billion handout scheme that it hopes will boost the flagging economy, but warned recipients would not be allowed to spend the money on marijuana, jewelry, or lottery tickets. More than 50 million eligible citizens will be able to begin registering for a digital payment of $277 from 1st August. The money can be spent at registered shops and outlets, excluding those selling marijuana, jewelry, or lottery tickets. Recipients will begin receiving the money in the fourth quarter of this year. The scheme is projected to cost around $12.5 billion. Finance Minister Pichai Chunha Vajira said it was necessary to inject money into the system to boost Thailand's flagging economy. The nation's vital tourism sector accounts for almost 20% of its GDP but has struggled in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic and changing traveler habits. Chinese tourists in particular have been slow to return. They previously accounted for the largest percentage of Thailand's visitors, with around 11 million touring the country in 2019. The World Bank forecasts Thailand's economy will grow by 2.4% this year, up from 1.9% in 2023. In another development, Thailand's top court will rule next month on a case seeking to oust Prime Minister Seta Thavisin over his appointment of a cabinet minister with a criminal conviction. In May, the court accepted a petition submitted by 40 former senators to remove Seta from office under ethic rules. The case centers on Pichit Chinban, appointed minister in a recent reshuffle, who served 6 months in jail for contempt of court in 2008. Pichit Chinban, a former lawyer with close links to billionaire ex-Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, later resigned from the cabinet in a bid to protect Seta. The Constitutional Court will give a verdict on Seta's case on 14 August. Seta, who has denied any wrongdoing, is also from Shinawatra's Pheu Thai party and became Prime Minister after forming a coalition with army-linked parties following elections last year. In other news, US President Joe Biden told Americans he quit the 2024 election to unite the country, saying in a historic Oval Office speech that it was time to pass the torch to younger voices.
I revere this office, but I love my country more. It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think it's more important than any title. I draw strength and I find joy in working for the American people. But this sacred task of perfecting our union is not about me. It's about you, your families, your futures. It's about we, the people.
In his first televised address since his stunning decision to quit the election, Biden also hailed his Vice President, Kamala Harris, who is set to be the new Democratic presidential nominee. Biden bowed out of the race later than any other president in U.S. history, giving in 2 weeks of pressure from Democrats after a disastrous debate performance against Donald Trump raised concerns about his age. Speaking in a hushed voice after a COVID infection, Biden used a powerfully symbolic setting to insist on his achievements while admitting it was time to move on. Biden's withdrawal has upended Trump's campaign, which had previously focused on the president's age and mental acuity. UK and Germany sign deal to boost military ties. Stay with us. Britain and Germany signed a joint defence declaration pledging to work more closely to strengthen their defence industries, reinforce European security and support Ukraine in its fight to repel Russian forces. Britain's new Defence Minister John Healey signed a pact in Berlin where he met German counterpart Boris Pistorius. The push for closer relations comes with the NATO military alliance assessing the enormous cost of fixing Europe's creaking defences in response to heightened fears about Russian aggression following Moscow's invasion of Ukraine.
And me in German to defence supply chains. Und eine kurze Frage an den. This is a new government determined to reset relations with Europe. Not just by signing pieces of paper, but in the way that we act together, we work together, and that we make Britain democracy's most reliable ally.
The declaration said Britain and Germany would look to nurture the defence industrial base in Europe, foster joint procurement initiatives and work together on research and development to improve production and innovation. In a section titled Deep Precision Strike, it also referred to long-term comprehensive cooperation in the field of long-range capabilities. Malaysia welcomes the Beijing Declaration on Ending Division and Strengthening Palestinian National Unity sealed by the representatives of Palestine in Beijing within the framework of the Palestine Liberation Organization and the formation of an interim government of national reconciliation. The Foreign Ministry said the declaration is a major milestone for Palestine in establishing its national unity and reconciliation. Malaysia believes this will bring many benefits to all parties, especially the people of Palestine. It also commended the initiative and concrete efforts undertaken by China in making the declaration possible, noting that while reconciliation is an eternal matter for the Palestinian factions, the support of the international community is also pivotal. Malaysia also reaffirmed its support for the Palestinian people's right to self-determination and peace, and remains hopeful that the agreement will pave the way for lasting stability and prosperity in the region. It said equally important is the commitment by all parties to working together to address the challenges facing Palestine, including resisting displacement and illegal settlements. The United States has criticized an Israeli bill that would declare the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees a terrorist organization, saying that such efforts are incredibly unhelpful. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said UNRWA is not a terrorist organization and the Israeli government should halt the movement of the legislation. He further said the attacks that the Israeli government has leveled on UNRWA are incredibly unhelpful and they do nothing to advance the cause of getting humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza. Israel's parliament on Monday gave preliminary approval to a bill that designates UNRWA a terrorist organization and proposes severing all ties with the humanitarian agency. After passing its first reading, this legislation will go to a parliamentary committee for further deliberation. UNRWA, which has more than 30,000 employees serving some 5.9 million Palestinian refugees in the region, has been accused by Israel of employing more than 400 terrorists in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, thousands of demonstrators angry over the war in Gaza marched on the U.S. Capitol as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu asked lawmakers for steady support as his forces fight Hamas. Crowds carrying Palestinian flags and signs gathered near the Capitol calling for a ceasefire in Gaza and the arrest of Netanyahu as prosecutors seek a warrant for him at the International Criminal Court. Small clashes broke out as police fired pepper spray on some protesters to redirect the demonstrations as it neared the seat of U.S. government. At a rally before the march, Palestinian and Jewish organizers stood on a stage and denounced both the United States and the Israeli government for genocide, calling for a citizen's arrest of Netanyahu. Relations between Washington and Israel have strained as the civilian death toll in Gaza has grown, leading to protests in the United States and criticism from President Joe Biden, although little has changed in the way of U.S. military support. On a related note, the war-torn Gaza Strip is facing an intensified risk of the outbreak of infectious diseases such as polio due to the terrible health conditions in the Palestinian enclave amid the latest round of Israel-Hamas conflict since October last year. The World Health Organization said the disease outbreak risk is likely to go beyond Gaza to affect other areas. Earlier, WHO researchers detected the poliovirus in 6 sewage samples taken from Gaza, while no confirmed polio cases have been reported in the territory. Polio usually affects children younger than 5 years old, with symptoms like fever, headache, muscle pain, and vomiting, and it can cause paralysis or death. Staff members from the WHO and the United Nations Children's Fund will conduct a risk assessment of virus spread by testing feces samples of local residents in Gaza. The assessment is expected to be completed this week, and in accordance with the results, the health officials will give their suggestions on whether to launch massive vaccination and which vaccine to be used. Due to the shortage of water, bad health conditions and poor access to medical service, the death toll from infectious diseases in Gaza is likely to even exceed that from injuries if the diseases break out. And in other news, North Korean sweet wrappers and packets of crackers made at a factory once visited by leader Kim Jong-un were seen on the streets in the South Korean capital. The trash was inside the balloon sent by North Korea in its 10th launch since May. The trash included packages from strawberry castella cakes and sesame seed crackers, which listed their production factory as a Chongreo corn processing plant. Kim visited the factory in 2015 after its establishment, saying it would be the standardized model factory in the food industry. The trash also included instant noodle packets and wrappers of powdered soap made at the Bonghua soap factory, with the description on the wrapper claiming it was an energy-saving soap due to it using less water. The nuclear-armed North has sent thousands of balloons carrying bags of trash southward since May in a tit-for-tat propaganda war between the two Koreas, which sold blasting K-pop and anti-regime messages from loudspeakers along the border in return. Pyongyang has described its balloon blitz as retaliation for anti-regime propaganda balloons sent northwards by activists in the south. Elsewhere, a car bomb injured an officer from Russia's military intelligence agency in northern Moscow. Russia's Interior Ministry said that a total of 2 people were injured in the blast caused by the detonation of an unidentified device, adding that an investigation is underway. The explosion ripped through a Toyota Land Cruiser shortly after the officer and an unidentified woman got into the vehicle. Kommersant, one of Russia's leading newspapers, said that the injured man served in the main directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, widely referred to as GRU Intelligence Service. State news agency TASS meanwhile said that an officer and his wife had been injured in the blast. It was reported that a man's feet were blown off and 5 other cars were damaged in the explosion. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has urged world leaders to work together and find solutions to hunger as he announced an initiative to tackle the most degrading of human deprivations. Lula has made hunger a key priority of Brazil's presidency of the G20, along with taxing the super rich, which will top the agenda when finance ministers meet today and tomorrow.
Em pleno século XXI, nada é tão absurdo e inaceitável quanto a persistência da fome e da pobreza, quando temos à disposição tanta abundância, tantos recursos científicos e tecnológicos e a revolução da inteligência artificial.
A United Nations report published yesterday said 733 million people had suffered from hunger last year, 9% of the world's population. With tears in his eyes at the end of his speech, the former metal worker born in a poor family in northeastern Brazil said he's moved because he knows that hunger is not a natural thing, but linked to political decisions. Lula's anti-hunger initiative will be officially launched in November when G20 heads of state meet in Rio. It aims to find common financial resources to fight hunger and to replicate initiatives that have worked in some countries. Social programs implemented during Lula's first two terms from 2003 to 2010 helped lift millions of people out of poverty. And moving on to sports, Morocco beat Argentina in game mud by crowd trouble. Stay with us. And kicking off with football, chaos and confusion reigned as Morocco beat Argentina 2-1 in their opening game of the men's Olympic football tournament. But only after a late equalizer for the South American side was disallowed and the final minutes were played out in an empty stadium following crowd trouble. Argentina thought they had escaped from the Group B match in Saint-Etienne with a 2-2 draw when Christian Medina scored in the 16th minute of added time. But as their players celebrated, projectiles including bottles and plastic cups rained down from the stands and several spectators entered the pitch, with the referee promptly blowing the whistle. The teams left the playing area, but the referee had not blown for full time, and the outcome of the match was completely unclear until the sides finally reappeared 2 hours later to play out 3 more minutes in a stadium by now emptied of spectators. Medina's goal was eventually disallowed for offside following a VAR review, and Morocco held on to claim all 3 points. It was an undignified start to the sporting action at the Paris Games, and a bad day all around for Argentina, whose players were booed as they emerged onto the pitch. That welcome came after Argentina players were filmed singing racist chants following their victory in the recent Copa America. In another match, silver medalists in Tokyo 3 years ago, Spain opened their bid for gold with a 2-1 win over Uzbekistan in Group C at the Parc des Princes in Paris. The Spain team featured 2 members of the Euro 2024 winning squad, Alex Baena and Fermin Lopez, but it was Marc Pubil who gave them the lead just before the half-hour mark. Uzbekistan had chances and drew level from the penalty spot in first half added time following a foul by Pau Kubarsi, with Roma forward Eldo Shomurodov converting the kick. Kubarsi, the 70-year-old Barcelona prodigy, had been booked early on and did not reappear for the second half. Sergio Gomez then had a penalty save early in the second half, but the former Manchester City player netted Spain's winner just after the hour mark as he fired in from Juan Miranda's cutback. Meanwhile, France have high hopes of winning gold on home soil despite coach Thierry Henry's unsuccessful attempts to recruit Kylian Mbappe into his squad. They beat the United States 3-0 before a large crowd in Marseille, with captain Alexandre Lacazette opening the scoring on 61 minutes via a fine strike from range. Lacazette then set up a new Bayern Munich signing, Michael Olise, to curl in the second, and defender Loic Bad hit it in a late third. In rugby, France struggled to live up to pre-tournament billing as favourites for Olympic gold in rugby sevens. Now, they were held to a 12-all draw by the United States to the disappointment of a packed Stade de France. The hosts, featuring Antoine Dupont, arguably the world's greatest 15-a-side player, were left to rue several errors in possession that opened the door for their lesser-ranked opponents. France opened their account halfway through the first half. A brilliant offload out of contact, releasing Jordan Seppo for a try in the corner. But the home crowd was stunned into silence just before the halftime whistle as US flyer Lucas Lacam broke through the French defense for a long-range effort that earned his team a 7-5 lead at the break. France restored their advantage practically from the kickoff in the second half, Ryan Rebage powering over after a move that started with a clever Dupont offload. But a powerful American counter, rocked after France were caught isolated deep in their half, allowed Marcus Tupuola to stroll in for a try that secured them a deserved draw. Muslim French sprinter Sukamba Sila raised concerns on social media about not being able to attend the Paris 2024 opening ceremony because she wears a hijab. The French Minister for Sports and the Olympic and Paralympic Games, Emily Odea Castera, said that she was optimistic a solution can be found so that Sila can attend the event. French athletes are barred from wearing a hijab during the Paris Games to respect principles of secularism. But athletes can wear a hijab in the Paris 2024 Olympic Games Athletes' Village without any restrictions. Home to one of Europe's largest Muslim minorities, France has implemented laws designed to protect its strict form of secularism, known as laïcité. Some Muslim associations and human rights groups allege those laws have targeted Muslims, chipped away at democratic protections and left them vulnerable to abuse. The French decision to bar its athletes from wearing a hijab was criticized by the United Nations Human Rights Office. Moving on to tennis, second seed Lorenzo Musetti advanced to the quarterfinals of the Croatia Open in Umag. The 22-year-old Italian recovered from a slow start to defeat Argentina's Marco Trungelliti 6-4, 6-3 and reached the ATP 250 clay court events last 8. Musetti rallied from an early 3-love deficit in the opening set to claim the next 5 games and with it the momentum of the match, which he wrapped up in 1 hour and 51 minutes. Musetti applied considerable pressure on Trungelliti's serve, earning 11 breakpoints and converting 4, while saving 2 of the 3 breakpoints on his own serve. The 22-year-old advanced to his first clay court quarterfinal since Hamburg 2023, and he will next play Serbian Dusan Lajovic. This was Musetti's first match since achieving a career-best Grand Slam results by reaching the Wimbledon semi-finals, where he lost to 7-time champion Novak Djokovic in straight sets. He is chasing his first ATP Tour title since 2022 in Naples. That's it on World Today. In our top story, no Malaysians involved in Kathmandu air crash. Join us for Malaysia Tonight, coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I'm Bryn Lepal. Thank you for watching. Take care.